Welcome back, everyone. We are ready to get into our last match of the day. It's going to be Swids versus Psycho. Psycho just took down ball control and knocked him out, and still has one more chance to get through to that final day on Sunday of week one of Swids. So, who you fancying here, Swids or Psycho, based on what we've seen today?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to say. We saw this series happen once already, and it did really seem like it was the Bomb Warrior and a little bit of the Mage that was struggling on both sides. So it remains to be seen if that's going to be the case again. But if it is, then the answer could well be that whoever's able to get that Bomb Warrior through is just going to be immensely favored.
Yeah, and I was looking at some stats Lurinder has updated us with, but at least during the Swiss portion, so 2 full days of Swiss across all regions, Warrior was at a 49% win rate with a 72 wins versus 75 losses. So very, very close to just even. And we've seen maybe the rough end of the stick so far today. Again, what we've seen on stream in Europe is a small sample size, but even then, just a less than 50% deck it is not looking too impressive over that many games, right? If you bring in Bomb Warrior, which doesn't feel super powerful, but if it's there to like take down the meta decks you're expecting, a less than 50% chance does not equate to a success for me.
Right, and it gets a little bit worse when you narrow it down to just Europe as well. Then it falls to around 45%, and that was again Swiss only. So I think then when you factor in these games as well that we've seen on broadcast where Bomb Warrior has not been performing well, it then falls a little bit again. So the sample is sort of building up that, Bomb Warrior might actually be a struggle based on the metagame that we're looking at right now, which, doesn't necessarily make it a bad bring. Just, potentially has run into less of the things that these people were expecting.
Yeah, and just to throw you a couple of more stats before we get into this game, as we can see how Group A has played out so far. But Demon Hunter through Swiss was 19-9, so a small sample size, but 67% win rate, which is crazy. Priest, though, 92-63, which equates to a 57.9% win rate, which again, at the top of the show, we were saying, is Priest just good, right? Does it just require a ban? And it looks like that may be the case, because that's obviously games where Priest has been left up as well.
Yeah.
It's been banned the most in Swiss, and it's still at an exceptionally good win rate. So looking great overall. I do hope, and this is maybe going to make me sound, people won't be happy with this, but I do actually hope we get to see some Demon Hunter maybe next week. I think the class has a nice few extra things to offer, especially if you watched APAC. Chonsu was playing a list I love, which is like a control list. So pretty happy if we see some of that maybe in Europe next week. But this is what we've seen so far. So to be expected. But honestly, when Bomb Warrior is the third, I guess fourth most popular, if you put Survival Druid and Malygos Druid kind of clumped together, it has not pulled its weight for a deck that has been submitted as much as it has.
Do you actually call that Demon Hunter build a control deck? Because to me, that's a hit you in the face with a 12/12 plus like 18 damage from my weapons, so you're dead deck.
Yeah, it's to differentiate from the aggro 1-drop deck. I just say it's more of a control deck because you do play AoE board clears, right? There's a lot of heal in the deck as well, so that's why I'd call it a control deck. But one, I love it, so I hope we get to see that. But just going back to the players we're about to see, which is Psycho and Swids, of course. And again, after 1 week, I'm looking forward to seeing what these players cook up for next week.
Yeah, I think we have seen Psycho enough at this point that we've talked at length about his little interesting twist this week where he's playing Animated Broomstick in both his Druid and his Priest to try and find some additional value from Rush minions. Swids line up a little bit more standard. We are just seeing that Druid and Mage, pretty standard stuff, and then Bomb Warrior actually the standard in Europe as well in terms of bring rates go. So we saw these two players clash in the opening match of the day, which does seem about a month ago at this point, but it was just today, and then they opened proceedings, and now they are finishing us off again at the end of the day, and we'll see if things do proceed as they did in that initial matchup, because as I mentioned, it really was that Warrior that did seem to struggle in the series.
Yep, and this is the list from Swids for this Druid. It is close to what I think is a very good list. I still think that there must be room for Crystal Power somewhere in Druid. I think the card's just too good. Some of the anti-aggro ability it has. I mean, we've seen already the value of Crystal Power killing early Sorcerer's Apprentice has literally been close to game winning, I would say. But I do think this is pretty close to a very good list here from Swids. Psycho, meanwhile, is going to be on this Bomb Warrior. So once more, we get to put to the test how good this deck is, or at least if it's got some potential. Because honestly, if I'm going to make a call right now, I imagine we see Bomb Warrior brink rates take a nosedive next week.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how reactionary people want to be. I could make the comparison to the early weeks of last season's Grandmasters, where Rogue had like one bad week, and then everyone stopped bringing it and saying Rogue was trash, and I had to spend 2 weeks like, no, Rogue is fine, and then it turned out that when we got a big enough sample, it was absolutely true, and Rogue was one of the strongest decks in the format. So even though 30, 40, 50, 60 even games through Swiss and 1 week of broadcast does seem like a large sample size, it's still small enough to fall under variance for a deck to be performing badly. And even on top of that, you might expect people to react to this metagame in a certain way that will make Bomb Warrior better next week. So then you might choose to stick to your guns. So there's a lot of things that do make it a lot more complex than just, this deck did badly in 1 week, so I'm not going to bring it in.
Well, let's get into this one. Swids, Mulligan done, opening hand ready. He has all of the tools to have very powerful turns in the near future. He just needs the ramp to help him get there, as he does have that KT in the Guardian Animals. He needs some ramp and a couple of zero-cost spells. So still got a way to go right now. Those two beasts are not the first couple of draws you want to see as Druid right now. So he is looking to get off to a relatively slow start. But on Psycho's side of the board, how is his opening hand looking?
Pretty impressive, to be perfectly honest. Corsair Cash twice, guaranteeing that he is going to at least hit one of those Wrench Calibers, and has a good chance of hitting that Ankar as well if he feels like he needs to get the card draw rolling. He already has the security of a Brawl to fall back on, and if he wants to just start pushing out some tempo against the Druid, he's actually able to do that as well with double Evil Quartermaster. So this is honestly a pretty nice looking opener here from Psycho.
Yeah, it's to be pretty solid. All the options in the world. Ankar, just nice to start drawing through that deck a little bit as well. And I don't think you're overly worried about, aimlessly putting damage to a Druid's face this early in the game, because it's not like you're expecting Ankar to kill Druid minions, right, in the mid or late game, so that seems fine. My only question is, what do you think about the Gidra skip, I'll say, with the hero power? Is Gidra something that could be played on curve against Warrior with this hand, or do you think it's just going to be thrown out there to die?
I would imagine it's probably a skip against Warrior in particular. Again, particularly because it would just be a bluff. You'd just be playing it to try and soak some key removal card out of your opponent's hand early, because if the bluff gets called, or if Psycho has no realistic way to deal with it, you didn't have the payoff at the time. He did draw Bog Beam, which would have been reasonable, I guess, if Psycho had just developed a minion into it. But as his hand stood, he didn't really have any way to pay it off there.
Yeah, Psycho just chipping away, getting the job done there, and he's just staring at Brute. But most importantly, the only issue you get here is just weird hand size issues. I feel like we've seen a few times in these Warrior games, where because you have, it's not like Pain Warrior where you can dump a lot of your hand because you are playing aggressive. There's a lot of removal tools, and because Druid often skips the first few turns of the game effectively, it means that your hand gets pretty full, and cards like Balrage might be a little bit awkward to get some value on.
Right. And honestly, with the length this day has gone for the European region, depending on various time zones for people spanning east to west in Europe, it could actually be getting genuinely pretty late for these players who would have been asked to have been up and prepped for a pretty early start as well, because that is a possibility and very likely. Generally, the APAC goes fairly quickly and they have to start playing quite early. So this would have actually been a pretty long day for some of these players, where in some regions of Europe it's going to be pushing midnight, and they've been active around the broadcast for 12 plus hours now at this point. It's some pretty taxing stuff.
That's it, and when you consider, like we said, this was the first match of the day, and now it's the last, so they've literally been ready the earliest and have to go the latest. And it's another funny thing where, although it's not a huge deal because the players playing today technically get tomorrow off, it does pay more to win, right? Like, whoever wins the group gets to just finish early and put their feet up and watch the rest of the broadcast. And I think there's definitely a value to that. It's similar to when you play out a big Swiss tournament. If your games end quicker, you get longer breaks. That's just how it works. Yeah. So don't ask me how Yala and Bunny Hopper actually, win things, because I would just be exhausted if the games they played till that long and I played them. But getting back to this game.
Bunny Hopper or Boston have never had a break in between a Swiss round in their entire career.
They're like, wait, people don't just play until the next round's ready? What?
Yeah.
But here, though, again, Battle Rage is a card that, again, just off today, hasn't really been looking too easy to get value off. Maybe that's just in the matchups we've been seeing. It does seem to be sat in the hand quite a lot, because this isn't the Egg/Pain Warrior. More of a slower control list there.
This will break your fall.
We all like Blood Bowl Brute, but we are going to get that removed in just a second. I think the Spectator mouse is just hovering over it. So we'll,
Spectator's nodded off. It's that late. It's that late.
I think Spectator might be... Oh, no, it's okay. I thought the Corsair was floating as well, and I was like, no, not like this. We're getting layers upon layers of cards. Spectator has broken? Oh, there we go. Okay. Another Corsair cache there, so all the Wrench Calibers in the world, and there's of course the Horde Pillager. So Psycho more or less has Wrench Calibers for the rest of the game, if everything works out and he has the time to play the Horde Pillager. And already pushing. So it's down to 21, and there's quite the board presence here.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, it was easily unappreciated part of the quality of Psycho's hand was just that he had the ability to play a little bit of tempo with the 2/2/3s and the lackeys that they generate, which is, not insignificant against Druid. It's pretty insignificant now when you get double Lake Thresher off of your Guardian animals, although that was pretty close to guaranteed with the beast that you had drawn already and the makeup of his deck. And now this turn has officially popped off with those draws coming off the Twilight Runner. This turn has been upgraded from very impressive to the absolute hyper nuts.
But I will say, Brawl cares not for the health of your minions. So at least Psycho does at least initially just have an answer.
But Raven, Brawl leaves one of these enormous minions alive, so I would argue that it does care about the size of your minions.
He could coin out Barav.
And then?
And Brawl.
And then win the Brawl?
No, he loses the Brawl, right?
Yeah, sure, then Barav.
Yeah, so it guaranteed clears the board, or he wins the Brawl. So he can clear if he really wants to. Obviously, it would be, I think no matter what minion lives is a bit of a nightmare here if he just did the flat Brawl play.
But if he makes the coin play, he is essentially 2-for-1ing himself on mass AoEs, and he knows that Survival of the Fittest has been cast, so basically everything is a huge threat from this point. So can he even afford to 2-for-1 himself on AoEs at that point?
Well, yeah, I agree, but the problem is, can he afford to leave any of these minions alive? Because then how does he kill them next turn? If he Deathwings into one, then he more or less uses the same level of resources.
I gotta move.
It's a tough turn whichever way you slice it, because I think he has to overcommit. He is going to go the other route we didn't really touch on, was play a minion to try and win the Brawl more often. And it's going to pay off. Armorsmith always winning Brawl since 2014.
Oh, shout out to Kit Kats.
Swids, though, although this doesn't look like the most amazing Druid hand to recover from, you've got to remember, all those dudes are pretty big, and the Twilight Runner by itself can actually start creating some card draw as well.
Yep.
That's definitely a card I thought would do more. At least, I mean, we're still early in the expansion, but Runic Carvings I thought would see like play in a deck. But it's just not for now. But it does feel quite powerful.
What to do?
It's a pretty good card to take when you are planning for your Kael'thas Survival of the Fittest pop-off turn to happen at some point in the future. After that point, not so much.
For no one.
This is starting to slowly line up pretty well for Psycho, right? And we can see now this Ghidra clears off the Armorsmith, but then Deathwing can pretty straightforward kill off the Ghidra as well. Which is pretty clean to have a Deathwing actually survive against a Druid minion. Oh, maybe not if he's going to play a Teacher's Pet.
Still a pretty monster Deathwing, though, as far as Deathwings go in terms of just the amount of power it's removing from play. Psycho now has options, though, having found Risky Skipper to go alongside that Lord Barov that was missing on the previous turn. That would have made so many things more possible on the previous turn. As it turns out, he won the brawl anyway with the Armorsmith, so no real harm done.
Do you think he goes for it now? Instead of using the
Skipper
Deathwing?
Barov? I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
You can then most likely clear up what comes out of the Teacher's Pet with the Wrench Caliber.
Oh, sure, yeah, I was looking for the Horde Pillager, but yeah.
Do try to keep yourselves alive.
You had to say it, didn't you, Sal?
I had to say it.
You
Yeah.
had to say something.
I gotta move.
I do like this, though. If you can't kill it, just go face. Get another bomb in the deck, and Psycho slowly striding ahead here. And has Swit's got any beasts left? I don't think he has, right?
I don't think so, no. Yeah, two Cleavers have gone. One Twilight Runner has gone, the other one is in hand, and then one Teacher's Pet. Yeah, that's the list.
So this is overflowing a dream. I do think, speaking of dreams, Swids is probably looking for Ysera. Oh, there you go. Right now, just to be able to create another plan, right, to try and get this done. And there's the Anubisats as well, which again are buffed, which means, as you mentioned, we talked a little bit earlier in the day about the value of the Anubisats in this deck, and they might just be a bit of the glue that really just pulls together some of the turns of this deck.
Yeah, 0 mana 7/9 taunts. Pretty strong indeed.
Waits for no one.
Do you like the Ironbark on this Porcupine?
Not particularly. I think I'd rather have it on my Ysera potentially next turn.
This Deathwing always lives.
Yep.
Blood and plunder.
You see what I mean? I feel like this really is a theme we've been seeing, and maybe it's just today and it's just one of those days. But Blood Bowl Brute in hand and Battle Rage in hand with this deck. I feel like we've seen them sat there a lot.
Yeah. I mean, it's certainly not built to the level that, Egg Warrior is to take advantage of those cards, but, I think the theory is if you're playing Risky Skipper in your deck, those are two cards that are just way too good not to include. When Risky Skipper makes all kinds of things possible when these two cards are chief amongst them. But yeah, certainly less effective than they both are in the Egg Warrior deck.
So
I love how
Psycho-Crash-
No Hands Gamer is now actually a GM, and we've commemorated that by stopping calling that deck No Hands Warrior. That doesn't make any sense.
Well, I think one of the problems with that is No Hands makes so many good decks
Yeah.
that we'll start going, No Hands Warlock, No Hands Warrior, No Hands
Yeah.
Priest. And people are going to be like, why is everyone playing these decks with no hands? Like, they're just going to get confused, like, what does this even mean now? So that is not an affront to No Hands whatsoever. That's just saying he is so good that we can't name decks after him anymore.
Have you seen No Hand Lock?
So many choices.
It's Hand Lock, but made by No Hands. So it's called No. Did you get it?
Eat your flesh.
I get it. I'm just disappointed.
Not mad, just disappointed.
Yeah. I'm beyond mad at this point. This is a good use, though. You know, while we're talking about rubbish, Psycho making this Battle Rage work is pretty nice here. Drawing 3 cards from what looked like a not 3-card draw Battle Rage turn has looked pretty good. Gets to use both now, drawing so much through his deck and still making something there, a job get done. So good work there for Psycho. And you can reassess next turn. But the real battle now is how many of these bombs can go off versus how many big dragons can Swids make.
Okay. There are now, what, 6 portals, 2 bombs remaining in Swid's deck, so he actually cannot die if he plays Overflow here this turn, which is, you know, silver linings and all. He can die if he plays Wild Growth. Okay, looks like he's not yet ripping the excess mana, though.
I'm a little bit surprised. I thought Overflow would have been pretty good there because it also heals his Ysera that's massive. Right? And you know, and he makes more dragons and you've seen a brawl already. I'm really surprised this is the play because now Swids has a minion on board he has to attack with to just draw 2 cards. And that also makes his Overflow in hand worse, right?
Right.
Arguably, this does just set up lethal to a certain extent as well, so... Although, is he expecting this 9/7 to stay alive at the end of this turn?
No, absolutely not.
Yeah, that's not fair. Yeah.
I think with him playing the turn the way he did, he's resigned to that 9/7 dying.
I'll show you who's boss. Honor made to.
I love how as soon as you started talking about how bad Blood Boil Brute and Battle Rage were, they've just been the best cards in Psycho's deck from that point until now.
Typical. People always trying to make me look stupid.
Yeah.
Treasure? What more can I ask for?
Or Pillager, pop off even more armor, gets enough to shield slam away the Ysera if he wants to.
Only an
Blood
Ankar,
Boil
though.
Brute is only an Ankar, but it does keep Swids in range of those 2 bombs for a little bit longer through the hero power, which is at least something. Again, silver linings.
Okay.
We must stop this corruption.
That seems okay, but again, I think it has to be an Overflow, right?
Does it now?
Well, if he draws,
Now
I guess he can draw first. Yeah.
Uh,
But that's what I mean, right? If he doesn't Overflow this turn, does he just pass? Because
Oh, he died!
it's game.
Why would you attack first? I don't understand. That's so greedy. It's so greedy to attack first there. There's only 2 bombs in your deck, so if you overflow, you cannot die to bombs regardless.
right.
If you overflow first and then attack afterwards, sure, that's inefficient in terms of the amount of health you have on your Twilight Runner. But you also just have 15 other minions in play that you've pulled off all your Dragon Portals and so on. Like, it doesn't matter, does it? Just don't die.
Yeah, exactly. That was my point. That's why I just assumed it was just Overflow and then reassess everything. Because if it was any of the other cards in his hand, they either drew cards without healing, which, as you mentioned, opens up a potential chance of death, or you attack, which also draws 2 cards without healing, which again makes it a little bit spicier. And my question was, okay, you could have got exactly, say, 1 or 2 Dragon Portals and then done. But if he doesn't play Overflow there, he's progressively more dead next turn, right? Because he's not gained any health. So even though there's more chances of bombs and he's still on low health amount. So I don't know. It looked like an Overflow to me. But regardless, Psycho does take the win. And again, I will say, and I will praise it, I did at the time, him making those battle rages work made it look good, but for me, it's the first time we've seen that package look good today.
So it's possible, I'm just realizing, like, based on the amount of total real cards that he has left remaining in his deck, that if he overflows, he always just draws too many, right? Like, a large chunk of his deck was either portals or bombs. So it's possible that if he overflowed at any point, he always just draws the 2 bombs and then hits fatigue. So he might just end up always being dead in that scenario as well. That's possible. I don't exactly remember what the actual makeup of the deck was at that point. But that would go to explain some reason why he was so reticent to overflow in that position.
Right.
But if he could do so and still be alive, I think it's probably still the play, because you just have to say that last board wins the game right now, and I don't die to the bomb damage. If you couldn't play overflow without staying alive ever, then obviously his play is fine, and he just has to dodge the bombs.
And there we go. Going to be going into game number 2, and it's going to be the Druid Mirror. But again, different list. Psycho playing the Mount Seller focus list with the help of that broom. And Swids, as we said, saw the survival of the fittest version. And what are you liking here, Solly? And this is less about the deck in isolation, but in this matchup, do you think the survival of the fittest just wins out because of its sheer power?
I'm actually not sure. Like, I don't have that much experience with and against Mount Seller Druid, because you don't really see it that much in my experience. It's possible that, like, Mount Seller itself is still just nutty against Druid, and so if you're able to do that early, it's much harder to come back from than Animals, for example. Like, if one Druid just goes Animals, the other Druid can just Animals cleave straight back into that and solve most of the problem. Whereas if with that same mana cost, a Druid goes Exotic Mount Seller, Innovate, Bog Beam, Ironbark, etc., and they have 6 minions in play, Guardian Animals doesn't really deal with most of that on the backswing, because you can still manipulate where the cleave attack will go with your Ironbark usage. Sometimes you'll get a beast summoned that has Taunt that messes with that whole plan. But I have a suspicion that Mount Seller might actually be really powerful in the matchup, but I haven't really had the opportunity to test it yet.
Okay, well, we'll see how it plays out. I'm also interested to see if it's a who Guardians first type of game as well. Because as you said, the person who does the Guardians into the opponent's one has that rush value. But also, do you really not play Guardians on curve? Because what if they just don't have it and then you win? Or at least, get very far ahead. So definitely a tricky situation to manage. And as always, I'm just interested to see how each player reacts or decides to progress in the game. Very similar to the Mage matchup.
So yeah, generally the rule I've been following is if it's just like, if I just have like 7 mana and I have Guardian Animals in my hand and I know I have no other good play, sure, I'll spend my mana and play my good card. If I have to like innovate it out, or especially Lightning Bloom it out, I'll often skip it in the matchup, because you're committing a lot more resources to potentially then get blown out by your opponent having the response back the other way. That's generally the rule I've stuck to, and it's worked out pretty well for me so far up until this point. But it's by no means, the be-all and end-all of the matchup. I'm sure this matchup has a long way to evolve from where we are right now.
Hey, though, while we were chatting, the Bloom did get played by Psycho, and he's going to be able to draw some cards. I do wonder, again, is this... Does he always attack? Again, just weird discovery questions here. Like, does he always attack and like open up potential removal turns for Swids? Because I guess he could go down to a Bog Beam. I'm just checking. Swids doesn't run the Crystal Powers, so I guess it's less likely it dies.
I think also Psycho's hand just kind of sucks right now, or like, before he made the attack with the Twilight. So he wants to attack to find Overgrowth and to find some pop-off cards.
Right.
Like if he had that minion stealthed and the rest of his hand was like Overgrowth, Kael'thas, Lightning Bloom, or something ludicrous, like he might just sit and just make sure he had that preloaded on board so he didn't get blown out by anything his opponent can do. But I think he just wants to try and draw as many cards as he possibly can in this situation.
Right, pretty reasonable.
So if he gets to attack twice, great, and he absolutely does get to attack twice in this situation. Here's the danger, though. By revealing it, you do now open yourself up to, like, coin Vate Animals on the opposing turn. Because now you really kind of want to play a second minion, and yeah, Psycho dodges the bullet here, which I think is pretty smart, just dropping the Wild Growth, especially now he sees that Mount Seller in hand. Definitely wants to Wild Growth his way back up to that. But the danger there was that you just get baited into playing like second Twilight Runner, for example, and then even though you didn't cast Guardian Animals, you basically have cast Guardian Animals, and then you get blown out by the Rushing Cleaver on the opposing side from the Coin Bait Guardian.
Correct. But I would argue that Thresher is a consideration because it would require a double trade, right? Which then makes it decent against the
Psycho playing Thresher?
Yeah, if Psycho played Thresher, then if Swizz did the Guardian Animals, then Thresher still requires 2 trades to die. And then if he doesn't double trade, then your Thresher gets to attack, right?
Sure.
So I think it was just, I agree with the Mount Seller, the ramp setup makes perfect sense. But in that specific scenario, because it was exactly Thresher, I think it is worth just stopping and thinking, maybe this counters the counter. You know, that sort of weird play.
Yeah, sure.
So many contradictions.
Now, is this just going to be a Mount Seller Bog Beam attack, try and draw some 0 manas?
I was going to say, it's like there's actually too many cards. Like, why can't we hold all these cards right now?
He does have a backup Mount Seller, though, so I do like this. No matter what Psycho does from this point, I do like one Mount Seller being played. Okay.
All right. Guess he's just burning a card. Wait, does he even? That's only 9, right? Yeah, he's only got 9 in hand right now. He's chilling. Nice miscount.
This was just good. I think there was only upside to this, right? He could get 0 mana cards to play.
Yeah, I just miscounted. I thought he goes up to 10 after the attack. So now Guardian Animals was guaranteed a cleaver there, I believe. No, there was double Twilight Runner as the other outcome. Right.
Suddenly, this Anubis-Ath doesn't look as cool, does he? Without his Survival of the Face buff. Still a good card, of course, but it's not quite the power level you're after.
Right. Oh, no Bog Beam or anything picked up there as well. Like, Swizz is still a little bit off at being able to deal with the Mount Seller. But I like the sequencing, because if he actually hit good options here, like, maybe he could have still done something with, like, Nature Studies with the Bog Beam, and then got the value cleave as well to really swing back the board state. But passing back to a Druid with 8 mana and a Mount Seller alive on their board, I don't think you win too many of these games of Hearthstone.
Yeah, and he couldn't have Bog Beamed anyway, right? Because he's not at a 7.
He's not a natural 7. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
He would have, and even say, I did initially, was about to say, oh, well, Nature Studies a Bog Beam, but he would need the coin, which then would mean he can't cast the Bog Beam even with the reduction. Yep. So yeah, he couldn't go for Bog Beam there. It would have had to have been nothing. There's your answer.
Yeah.
Doesn't run Crystal Power, so he couldn't have even gone to like double Crystal Power draw or something crazy.
He could coin first, Nature Studies, and then Innovate. No, he's even 1 mana off Innovate Bees at that point to be able to clear, so you have to coin Innovate first, then Nature Studies, and yeah, I still don't think there's a spell that you can come up with that deals with it.
Yep, this Wild Growth going to be pretty nice. 2 ramp up, of course, but also just buff that Ghidra enough to clean up the Thresher. Crystal Power Heal on the Mount Seller, Crystal Power Heal on the Ghidra, and this is looking quite difficult to deal with.
That's some ugly beasts, though, which does give Swizz just a bit of a window to pop off here.
It does, but he has a 4/7 Wind Fury.
Oh, interesting. He says stop at Survival of the Fittest. Interesting. So the ordering there is questionable, but not necessarily wrong. The way he did it here, he just wanted to hit another cheap spell off of this Studies. Then he plays the cheap spell, then he overflows off the second proc of the Kael'thas, and then hopefully the overflow draws him a third proc, ideally, that he can pop off with. but he did have the option to just overflow first, which was inefficient in terms of hand size. I don't think he got to draw the full value, but it is more likely, I would say, to then get the second proc off with the survival of the fittest at the end, based on, you know, two blooms left in his deck, for example. Oh, Dr. Broom!
Okay, so it looks like, what, Twilight and then Broom attacking to draw cards and then see what you get? He's only a few damage off lethal here.
That's true.
So many contradictions.
Or he could just go for the safe play, I say safe, of like trading into this KT and then just dropping Ysera. You know, if he wants to think about that play. He could even drop Ysera and use Broom to use the 4 damage from Ysera to help out.
Yep.
Oh my god.
This is a lot of Zixor value coming out.
Oh, Nature Studies. That can open up some good options because Psycho, unlike Swids in the earlier turn, has the mana to really cash in on a lot of options coming out from Nature Studies here.
Oh my god, this
I wish you
bloated
go
Python.
for the Broom, though.
This bloated Python is so nutty with the Broom. Alright, Broom best card in Hearthstone, I'm sold.
I was just going to say, I think it's the more, as opposed to Bloated Python being nutty with Broom, it's Broom makes everything nutty.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
full stop, it's just Broom is the card.
Psycho definitely roping out there, had a lot more stuff that he could have potentially done. You know, just Nature Studies, for example, there, just to fill up the one more board space. Even if he doesn't end up playing any of the spells that he takes off it, it's still 1 mana that he would allocate this turn to discounting something for the following turn and get himself another beast in play right now.
It's one of those weird ways to rope out. You don't rope out because you're struggling or because things are going wrong. You know, you can't get trading. You rope out because there's too much good stuff to do.
Yeah.
You can't squeeze in all of your good things. Here, though, the minions are big, but the problem is, as you kind of alluded to earlier, I think, does the Mount Seller build just go under? The the survival of the fittest, does it just get under there and be that little bit too fast for it to make an impact? And again, super small sample size, but it did the job in this game for Psycho. It goes 2-0 up over Swid so far.
Yeah, very impressive performance for Psycho's lineup. So far up until this point, you know, he has had his issues here and there, but certainly his kind of unique acquisition of Broom into all of his decks does seem to be like something that we might see propagate throughout other Grandmasters deck lists in the coming weeks. So, you know, I think you take a lot of satisfaction over that. Like, I'm sure, you know, Hunter Ace last year in GM, when he was basically innovating something every week, and then the next week, you know, 15 other GMs would be copying it immediately. Like, I'm sure that does feel good, even if you're not necessarily picking up amazing results with the deck yourself, which, you know, Hunter Ace absolutely was back then. So it remains to be seen, of course. You know, we might just be getting ahead of ourselves, but it does really feel like every time the Broom comes into the hand, it's good in whichever deck that Psycho's been drawing it in.
It's the fact that it gets drawn and you're like, oh, there's about 5 different ways I could use this in the next few turns. Yeah. What's the best? Like, that's always an exciting card. But yeah, the big one for me last year was one Samdi, right? That was the huge one from Hunter Ace, I believe, of just he was the first person at least I saw starting to use that, and then suddenly that spread like wildfire to, oh, is this good? To, why are you playing Priest without this card, you fool? So that was pretty hyped to watch overall, but we're going to go into this game, and Psycho might be going for a 3-0 as he's going to be on his mage and Swids once again locking this druid. This is Conquest, of course. You have to win with every single one of your decks. Psycho off to a reasonable start with this opening hand. The Solarian Keep and the Primordial Studies. Are those two of the cards you don't throw away for Apprentice, do you think?
I think Solarian for sure. Studies not necessarily would call that a keep. I think if you have a spell damage minion, digging for Cram Session might be more valuable than just, you know, finding ways to get more spell damage minions that you don't really pay off. But Solarian, 100% a keep in just about every matchup, yeah.
Time runs out on me.
Is he coining Apprentice again?
I mean, Swids doesn't play Crystal Power though, right?
That's true. That's
Yeah,
true.
he
That's a
doesn't play
really good
Crystal
point.
Power.
That's a really
So,
good point. Yeah.
There's no punish, right? Oh no, there's
That's
not
right.
no punish. Nature Studies into something is punish.
Yeah.
Or Bloom into Bog Beam is a punish.
Oof. This hand is disgusting on the Druid side, though, I will say. Okay, so this is a hand that you could argue there is some payoff to tempoing a Sorcerer's Apprentice here. It's not like a spectacular payoff, but depending on what your draw off the top next turn is, you could actually get a pretty sick Mana Cyclone. Yeah. Psycho's sticking to his guns. Clearly believes this is the way.
Like I said, when the punish is a Nature Studies into a cheap enough removal tool,
Mm-hmm.
and you've not seen Nature Studies get played this last turn,
Yeah.
I think that's a reasonable play as far as I'm concerned. Like, I like it from Psycho a lot. The upside could just literally win him the game and win him this series.
Really? But then he throws away one of his cheap
On it.
spells immediately.
Sol is loving this. I can just tell from his voice that he's enjoying watching Psycho make these plays. Not necessarily because he agrees with them or not, but because it's just interesting to watch a good player do different things with a deck.
Exactly, yeah. Like, again, when I question stuff like this, it's just like, obviously Psycho is a fantastic player, and he's playing the game in a different way than I would with a deck that I have been very successful with. And I find that fascinating because, like, you know, is there stuff for me to learn in this position? I'm sure there is. Like, is he right? Am I right? Like, who knows? Like, that's what makes Hearthstone so interesting.
And now the Shambhala, this one does look good to me. Just Shambhala on curve seems great. Suddenly, if there was removal, it would 100% have been played. 100%. The only thing he's fearful of is Bloom into Guardian Animals the next turn.
Yes.
Or at this point, do you care?
Yes.
Well, you care if it happens. My point is, at this point, are you in enough that Bloom Guardian Animals hurts you no matter what you do? So why not make the turn that can just insta-win you the game?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly no doubt that Psycho is just all in at this point, and he kind of has to continue this line that he's committed to. Like, there's just no other way around it. But do you lose to Guardian Animals coming down? Yes, kind of. Is that sort of my point? Also, yes, kind of. Like, I feel like, you know, when you have Sorcerer's Apprentice in your hand, you can beat ramp into Guardian Animals a lot of the time.
Now, though, is it just Solarian Firebrand?
I mean, that's the line, right? Like, this is kind of what Psycho's just committed to. Maybe you need to hold back the Firebrand because you need to clean up if the worst happens.
So then is it the old tempo Mana Cyclone?
I mean, we saw one from Swids, I think, in the previous series, right? You could use it to break up some cleave positioning, but it's not really going to do anything because the other rusher will always be able to take care of one minion that you're using to break up some cleaves.
And again, I like that Psycho's sticking with this, right? He's playing Zoom right now, and if you're gonna put, you know, your foot halfway down, you may as well put your foot all the way down, right? And just see what happens, because the choices are limited. If he had a ton of spells, we could talk all day about how to do the Cyclone turn, but he doesn't. So you don't bail out. I do like this. Just say, okay, well, I'm just gonna have more stuff.
Ouch.
This Spyrov's got a lot of work to do. What Jandis should I say? We shouldn't use the second name since there's about, what, 4 legendaries with Barov?
So, just to be clear, you want to tempo out a minion that puts a small minion in the middle and big minions on the outside into a big cleave.
Yeah, because you'll get a 5-drop rush to kill it.
Okay. Or Earth Elemental.
Oh.
Cyclone is a combo activator, right? Like, that's actually just the line. Yeah, this is actually just the line. He needs a combo activator for Brain Freeze and one thief this turn. I think this actually just makes sense, as weird as it looks.
What to do?
Okay.
Conjurers wait till turn 9.
Can I have all of these?
Time runs out on me.
It has to. Oh, okay. Well, I'm glad I didn't finish that sentence because I look stupid. Thanks, Psycho. Saved by the bell. I'll be honest. I felt like it had to be Conjurers there, but I can see why I'd be wrong.
Yeah, I think if you're Psycho here, your job is stall for Prime, right? I don't think you'd be doing anything aggressive at this point. So Polymorph might just be the best answer.
But the second Guardian Animals... Again, you don't see this often. Psycho had an absolutely amazing start, but had one of those weird mage games where you just don't draw spells, which...
Yeah.
I can't believe I'm saying, because those just don't really happen. Honestly,
Yeah.
There was no, one magic trick would have changed that game.
Yep. And I
Never
think the way
mind a ton of others.
I think the way his hand panned out, his way of playing was absolutely the highest win rate, because there's no point in sitting and holding a Sorcerer's Apprentice when you then don't draw any spells, right? The debate comes from what is your average draw on turn 3 after you've tempoed your Sorceress, and is it then good or bad to have a Sorcerer's Apprentice on the board instead of in your hand? And I think it's a much more complicated debate. I think in this particular game of Hearthstone, the point is moot. Psycho was just kind of cursed this game.
Yeah, wouldn't I think you've got to look at what would the game look like if he kept hold of his minions. Well, he'd probably be dead.
Yeah.
At this point, so
Yep.
Revolving
100%.
Missiles can come down though and start, hopefully for Psycho's sake.
Oh my
Wow.
goodness!
Wait, was that kind of a buff to the whole board?
Yeah, the board got bigger. All right, pack it up.
You can seal the Jandis.
Just pack all of it up.
Oh. So, we're going to be moving on to game 4 very shortly.
Dance, puppet.
The Sheep of Ultimate Doom.
Prime off the top into Flame Strike, Flame Strike, Flame Strike, double Power of Creation. Nope, that appears to have not happened.
Oh, 2 pretty good pulls off Jandis though. Not that it matters, but just as in general. A Taunt and a Waxer Dread.
Just had to hit twice on the left into, twice on either side into the 101 in 120 for a Doomsayer. Seems easy enough.
Is that 120 now? Is that post-expansion?
It is, yeah. It's 126, I believe. I can double check real quick. 125.
Not even close. Good guess.
Yeah.
So it's just and again, this probably looks silly to just watch in that Switch is like, okay, make the best player because he's so far ahead it's almost difficult for him to lose. But he's just finishing out the game, right? Just going to make sure you do the strongest turn. Mage is capable, like you said. Although maybe it was half a joke, maybe it wasn't. But the Prime could do that, right? It could just spam spells and win him. It could cast a box that then wins him the game. It can happen.
Yep.
So you can't, even though it looks so absurdly one-sided, you can't just lose concentration. If Swids loses this game, he's knocked out.
And there were 2 of them in there as well, so it's not like it was incredibly unlikely. It was like 1 in 12, 1 in 11, 1 in 10, slowly decreasing every turn that he was going to be able to get access to that. But again, it's just another game with the Mage suffering, and I feel so bad because I really believe that this is a very powerful deck, but we just keep seeing people just not hit card draw and run out of cards, which is just so far from my experience playing this deck. It's absurd. Like, running out of cards is the furthest thing from my mind most of the time playing.
Right. And what excites me is that there are ways for this deck to evolve as well, right? Even I built a similar deck. I say similar, not that similar, but the idea is there, right? It wasn't too much of a stretch to go for a low curve, tons of spell idea for Mage, and I had Thalnos in, right? Because it's like cheap card, spell damage, draws. Like that's normally good, right? And Thalnos isn't in current lists. Maybe it makes it in there. Maybe the deck just runs 2 Arcane Intellect. I mean, this one is, but some people have been playing one. You know, and so on. Maybe, however silly it might sound, stuff like loot hoarders come in or a gadget zan. I mean, I am being very silly now, but all I'm saying is that this is not just Tempo Mage just sucks. You know, I think there's definitely something here. It just might not be as, I'll say, all in as the builds kind of are right now. They're very much in this whole let's go crazy with an apprentice. Maybe they just loosen up a little bit and become a little bit more just generally consistent.
Yeah, sure.
It's going to be the mirror. I do enjoy the mirror though. It's a lot of fun. I've yet to see each player go about it with the same mindset. I feel like everyone's got a style with this deck.
Right.
I will crush your delusions of grandeur.
That's the wrong missiles.
Ray of Frost, usually a pretty good pickup. But again,
yeah, it does.
I can't help. I'm probably biased after today, but I can't help but just move my eyes across to Arcane Intellect, and Psycho agrees.
That is interesting, actually. Although Psycho is only playing the one AI list, right? It was Swids that we looked at that's playing two. Yep. So I guess that makes it more reasonable. But yeah, Ray of Frost is such a premium card when you just have a Mana Giant in your hand already, right? Like, you don't have to wait for that payoff to be drawn. It's just literally like Sorcerer's Apprentice, discount your mana cost, your Mana Giant by 2 for 0 with that card. Both copies are randomly generated.
That's it. It kind of makes the Ray of Frost free, right? In like a weird world, because it reduces your Mana Giant down by 2. So yeah, I do agree. But again, maybe I'm too latched onto this, but the more I think about this is how many games do you lose? The games where you don't have Ray of Frost, or the games where you don't have any card draw? Ray of Frost is a fantastic card, but card draw is pretty cool too.
You know what? You make a compelling argument.
You try sometimes. Okay. Conjures the one drop, let's go. Go for the tempo plays. I mean, is it that silly of a suggestion?
Conjur's calling your one drop? Yes, it's that silly of a suggestion. What do you mean?
Well, what's your alternative, right? Okay, he's gonna do this.
I mean, Tome of Intellect, just look for a playable, any secret, Arcane Intellect, Cram Session, or...
You don't think he's going to be forced into a Cyclone this turn?
No, I was going to say, like, the two lines were just to play the Tome of Intellect and look for a playable, or do this. Those were the two.
Well, the outcome from the Cyclone was a Polymorph and a Pyroblast, neither of which are really impactful in the matchup. Maybe Polymorph's good enough to just stop an early Giant, but that's about it. Pyroblast's going to be a bit tough to pull off here.
It's honestly not looking bad. I would have my eyes lighting up at that Pyroblast right now because Swids is the aggressor. Yeah. So Psycho's already at 25. Swids gets to push 4 more here, guaranteed. There's a good chance that maybe 2 more of this damage gets to connect again on the following turn, and you will generate some more damage over the rest of the game, most likely. Like, it generally happens, on top of which you already have a Prime in your deck that can deal additional face damage as well. So, actually, I think that Pyroblast might just give Swids a game plan.
Okay. Well, speaking of game plans, the Apprentice has been used from Psycho. He's about to go off. He doesn't have a Cyclone, though, but he does have that Conjurers. He does have the Evocation as well.
Yes, he has Evocation, 0 Mana Giant, and preferably 0 Mana Giant without having to use the Conjurers.
And Swids, you can see, looking tense, just hoping, maybe against hope, that there is no Cyclone. And there isn't. Psycho, but
oh, there's something much, much worse if this evocation cooperates.
True. Just have the Polymorph, though.
So it's 1, 2, yeah, nothing, not enough free for him to be able to drop the Giant and Conjurers at this turn, I believe. Yeah,
so here's the question,
much mana here.
Does he ever just drop the Giant anyway and plan on it not dying? Is that too much of a stretch, or is that a risk you think worth taking?
I would be tempted to hold on to it here.
Oh, the rope. A rope.
Yep, I like it. I think the turn was completed there. I think that's a conscious decision not to play the Zero Mana Giant.
Yeah, I think it's close though. I think
I'm not sure whether Ogre Magi was the pick that he wanted off the Primordial Studies at the end, but I think the rest of the turn was conscious decision.
I wonder.
Not really too many options here whatsoever. Looks like it almost has to be rolling Fireball, right?
Yep. His hand is so slow on Swizz's side.
I think it would be rolling Fireball, or it would have to be like Firebrand trade ping the Apprentice and like set up a Firebrand, but it just didn't feel that great. But wow.
Finally! Do you know how many times I've said Walking Fountain in this broadcast? It finally shows up. Jeez, nice to see you, buddy. Go up on time next time.
That's just really good. What's a Pyroblast? Sol?
Yeah. Suddenly the game...
Oh.
I mean, you saw Swidz's reaction, right, to the situation. Like, I think he sees exactly that game plan that he had being snatched away from him very, very quickly.
We hunger for vengeance.
Oh, yeah?
Okay.
Even if I wanted that 6/6 in play, I would have been tempted to just brain freeze my own Blood Mage Thanos and still take the
Right.
feeling.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking, right? Like, you know your opponent has generated cards.
Yeah.
Is that just Omega greedy? Like, it was 1 damage on the Walking Fountain. Was it really worth?
Mm-hmm. Again, like, he tempoed an extra 6/6 this turn. That was the big deal about him actually casting the Brain Freeze, and then by using the Brain Freeze, he did the default good thing, which is to use it on his opponent's minion, which makes perfect sense. And we're super caster vision on a Pyroblast right now, but even then, you could perhaps argue that being at 19 is about the only thing you have going badly for you right now in this matchup.
Yeah, exactly.
So maybe that's something you should work to solve.
Yeah, for me it was less, always get the heal, to more, you're right, 19, mate.
Yeah.
Mage has a lot of direct damage spells.
Yeah. Well,
okay.
That got worse.
For a second, I also looked at whether he ever actually goes the other way and potentially just uses Conjurers on the dragon. I guess he was lining up the dragon for the trade instead.
Right.
And I do like the trade here, though, right? Or does Psycho actually think with his hand that this is all he's got?
It's a pretty accurate assessment, right? It kind of is all he's got right now.
Yeah, that's fair. But there's the draw next turn and the draw from the Thalnos, right? That can pull something out the bag, so to speak. So yeah, you know what? On reflection, I think I can get behind the face damage there.
Yeah, I do actually really like that face attack. Swid's now to Conjurer's Calling.
What to do?
Cannot even take a trade here. 4/4 Taunt actually putting in work. It's a pretty terrible minion.
Whoa.
But it's huge. And
Whoa.
that hulking Overfiend is massive. That is a Batterhead demon, essentially. After killing a minion, it can attack again. So
And also, he can just make it so his
ball.
final attack kills the 6/6 with a ping.
Yep.
Oh. Okay, didn't see that coming. Oh!
Oh,
Should have killed
my
the
goodness.
the golem, the giant. I mean, I'm joking, of course.
That's insane. Arcane Devourer is the giganuts in this deck, by the way, when you Conjurer's Calling into it.
Yeah.
It gets so big so quickly.
Psycho just has a whole lot of nothing. Is he reduced to actually ping, trade, go face with the 4/10?
I think so.
And just play stuff? Like, just play cards? Maybe keep the lab partner for the spell damage?
The problem is he doesn't have a prime in his deck. He's used
He has Evocation, though, right?
No, he used that for his Mana Giant turn.
Oh,
that's gone as well.
He did.
So he has Mana Cyclones, but no way to generate spells off them because he's not going to draw into spells and Cyclone unless it's like Okay, so here's the reason why you hold on to the lab partner is that you need to go like lab partner cram session into cheap spell into plus mana cyclone, and then kill your opponent. Mana
Right.
You get burned.
That doesn't sound easy, but I think that's about where he's at in terms of win condition.
Turn it up.
Evocation plus Arcane Devourer. Let's go.
You can still double Ray of Frost if he feels the need.
Do.
He had a Sorcerer's Apprentice. This was just lethal this turn.
Oh, yeah.
100% of the time.
Time runs out already.
This Devourer.
It's so good when you get it in this deck. Because even a lot of time, like, same turn, like, you just start the turn, like, Hunter is calling off the rip, and then you hit it, and you're like, oh, okay, I now have, like, 6 more mana to spend on other spells to make this thing nutty. Like, it's crazy.
Only does
Raz.
3.
Deals 3, yeah.
No. Oh wow! It looks like we're. Oh, we might be going to the next game, Sol.
Yep. Psycho's going to play out his cards, but there is the small matter of a scaling 13-13 on the other side of the board that he has no other way of dealing with. And now, all of a sudden, Swids from the brink has brought it all the way back, and it's the Tempo Mage this series that is potentially laying Psycho's lineup down.
Yeah, and I didn't see that one coming. I know the mirror is very volatile, especially, but it looked like Psycho was so far ahead. I was expecting along the lines of a Prime would have to be played, or like the sickest evocation for maybe a ton of stall. But no, it wasn't that. It was just that giant living, the Conjurer's Calling, which is very funny because it was Conjurer's Calling from Psycho that put him so far ahead with that fountain, right? So it was just very, very crazy indeed that both players are reliant on that conjuring, which is I'm not going to say a new tech because we're a week into the expansion, but a slightly later addition to the list was that one of conjuring that people were playing. That wasn't just like an instant, oh, play Giants and Conjurer's Calling. I think a lot of people thought 4 mana was actually too slow to play in the list, and we're seeing maybe just that slight extra slow value play is the difference between winning and losing some games.
Yeah, certainly seems that way. But this mage struggling is the big point in this series now. I think in their first series, Warrior lost 4 times out of the 5 games that were played. And now if Swids is to complete the reverse sweep here, it will be the reverse sweep just straight up on mage, meaning it will lose 3 times out of the 5 games that are being played. So,
yep, and now we're going to see who's going to take the crown for the worst looking deck. Is it Tempo Mage or is it Warrior today? It's a good thing to note, as of course, we were talking a lot about Warriors' sort of not great win rate in the Swiss, the not fantastic performance so far today, but it did draw out the second most bans in the Swiss as well. Priest was the most banned class, and then I believe it was Warrior. So again, whether you think the deck performs well or it should be brought or not, it does actually. If a deck gets banned, then it's probably done something right. I do believe there's a kind of weird thing where in Americas, I think Hunter's been banned 100% of the time it's been like in a player's lineup or something like that. So again, kind of weird that Hunter's not really up there. But if you bring in a deck that draws a ban out, something right is happening.
Is it cold in here? Or is it just me?
Psycho really does just play this deck like it's Highlander Hunter. Just biggest minion on curve every single turn. I love it. It's great.
It's going to get Shield Slammed and traded away, but it does leave Psycho with an empty board to play around with.
Yeah.
You get burned.
And this is nice, actually. Setting up the Firebrand after seeing that Shield Slam. One Thief is going to get comboed. And Insta-Snap Ray of Frost next turn.
Insta-Ray. Yeah.
There's options for Apprentice, Ray, Mana Cyclone, and along with that Brain Freeze as well.
Yeah, imagine he'll just keep curving out with Jandis from this point, though. Try and milk the Cyclone value a little bit more because he can, because his hand just allows him to do so. He has, other great plays to make.
And I think most importantly, if Swids doesn't play a target for Ray, he's not going to start spamming this on his own minions, right? So that just seems very wasteful.
I have done that a lot. I have Ray across my own minions a lot.
With Jandis as an alternate player, should I say?
Yes.
Sometimes you have to hit your own minions, but with just a Jandis on curve, I think it's worth passing.
I must choose.
Chooses to put the damage into the Firebrand, which currently is setting up for that second risky skipper that he has in hand. Did play the first one on curve, on turn 1 after much deliberation. Wow, I wonder which one.
You mind games this subtle and put it on the barista.
For what benefit?
No benefit whatsoever. That's the mind game.
Okay. Wait, does he actually need to brawl this? I guess he doesn't have a second minion to play alongside the risky skipper, so it's not actually a full clear. I mean, I say that unless he wants to use coin, but he doesn't want to use coin. He wants to coin Blastmaster Boom next turn and just be aggressive.
Yep. Wait, coin wouldn't work anyway, would it?
Oh no, sorry, yeah, I'm miscounting still. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Is now the time? Or is this just Firebrand ping, maybe?
Yep.
And just wait one more turn.
You fight me, you get burned.
I do feel like when I'm watching people play this deck, I'm like a child on Christmas, where you're always just going, "Oh, can we get up and open the presents yet?" Like, no, just look, half an hour, all right? It's like 3:30 in the morning. Like, really been half an hour, but really, it's just when do you go off? And Psycho, I think now seeing the Dr. Boom from Swids, if there's ever a time to go, especially with this giant in hand, it might just be right now.
I mean, I was saying, wow, the fact that costs 8. It costs 8 still. That's not how this deck is supposed to work.
There's also a slight issue of if you play Sorcerers and Spell, then your Sorcerers might die from these bombs.
Yep.
Turn it up.
I mean, sure. Fine.
All that can happen. That just dies to Ray of Frost. Or Brain Freeze. This is insane.
So now he has to Ray a couple of the Boombots instead of the Dr. Boom. That's kind of weird. That is a really, really weird pan out. Yeah.
The Malygos Mage could happen.
That was a really trash discover, by the way. You did not want any of those.
In all seriousness, when Malygos is your pick, you've had a bad day.
Yes.
Oh. Oh, the dream. In 2 turns, Malygos Cram Session. It's insane. You're laughing, but it actually is insane.
In 2 turns, when his Sorcerer's Apprentice is still alive to discount the Cram Session. Yeah, sure.
No, he'll discover another studies to reduce the Malygos to 7.
Okay.
Look, nothing can make me disappointed here at just saying Malygos Cram Session is a great combo.
Sounds like a pretty good name for a band as well.
Malygos Cram Session is a great combo?
No, just Malygos Cram Session.
Treasure? Loot? What more can I ask for?
Now, this is the part of the game where Psycho has to get creative.
Yeah, I'm struggling to see it, if I'm honest.
Oh, just buy 2 more turns, Psycho.
I'm pretty sure he needs cards right now. As a matter of urgency, I think he needs Hearthstone cards. The alternative is just tempo Mali this turn.
Oh, yeah.
And it just sticks, and then you pop off. Maybe
like
that was actually just the highest win rate line. It's like your Mali just lives.
Because imagine Mali double cram session. Draw your deck. What went wrong in this series, Saul? I feel like, I mean, fair play to Swids, obviously. I'm not taking anything away from him, but I feel like Psycho was in control of this series, and it's just slipped away.
Yeah, for sure. It pains me to say it, but it is Tempo Mage that's looking to be the problem here for Psycho. Its stats were, mediocre, let's say. Like, it was slightly above 50% in most regions overall, but certainly not the powerhouse performance I was expecting, and seeing some of the best players in the world piloting this deck that I've had a ton of success with. So it does seem to have overperformed generally in a large sample size. So maybe there's something to be saying that when some of the best players in the world play against that deck, they're able to engineer the situations better as well.
And also time is a factor, right? Like facing this deck the first few times, you've got no clue what's going on. Right? Whereas the more popular a deck becomes, the more you see it, the more you play against it, the more you play with it, get used to it, and know how to counter it. Or at least, play well versus it. Here, though, there is still an 8-8 that Swids has to deal with in some respect, and he doesn't really have a good way to do that. I guess the Barov can make this pretty clean, I guess.
Treasure? Loot?
Yeah, I'm a little surprised that he's not just going Barov, get rid.
Yeah, me too. I was silently going like, wait, is he just leaving a giant up?
Yeah. I guess he's saying with the hand that he has, like, worst case scenario, even if like Conjurer's Calling spews minions all over the place, he has Barov Bladestorm. But then there's still like Death Rattles and Divine Shields and other things that you have to be concerned with if that's your big plan.
I think that's my worry, because what's going to bust this game for Swids? It's if Tyrion, I always forget it, the demon one that summons the Dreadlord, any Death Rattle, any sticky minions you mentioned quite rightly is suddenly way more of a problem. So I just thought Barov there was just okay, get gone, and then he can play Rattlegore next turn.
Yeah,
because now he can't play Rattlegore, and I feel like Rattlegore wins him the game.
I agree with most of those words. Yeah.
Only most.
Most of those words, yeah.
I do like this as well. You could be like, missed the damage, but I think I like protecting the health on the minions. Warrior doesn't really have, outside of exactly Barov, a great way to deal this kind of quantity of health, of damage.
Yeah.
This will break your fall. This will break your fall.
Just about secret sequencing this turn more than anything else. Wants to make sure he got full information about how he's going to proceed with the rest of the turn.
I must choose.
Yeah, it feels weird to me that Swid seems to be in a bit of a weird spot now. And it just didn't need to happen, right?
He's just going to leave this board up and just invest the 4 mana into the fresh Wrench Caliber.
Sol. Mali Cram Session time.
It is actually Mali Cram Session time, yeah. There are 3 bombs left in the deck, though, so I'm not entirely sure you want to be drawing 6 cards that badly.
Evocation had to come and ruin the fun. It's probably just Fireball Evocation.
Is it? Oh, Conjurer's Calling?
You could Conjures, I guess.
I wonder.
Evo first?
Does he have a
This
9,
gives him-
12?
Gives him one less
14.
spell, but Gives him more mana to play with.
Yeah. A third Gram session? Okay.
You could still go. If only. I was confused for a second there. I wasn't sure what Devolving actually achieved with, like, you know, no Cyclone or anything in hand.
Yeah. It's just strictly worse. Just killing it with the generated spell there. They're both generated spells.
Oh, counter spell. That's a big deal.
Counter spell's pretty good. Mirror image, pretty good also.
Yeah. Creates another level of health, and by that I mean a different health total to make Bladestorm just progressively more awkward to set up. Obviously, we can see there's Lord Barov there, which will set everything to 1, but just in a general good play against Warrior is to make the board health very, very, very oddly shaped.
Switz needs to count his lucky stars that he drew a spell that turn, because otherwise he was in serious trouble with how greedy he's been with leaving these board states up. Because Lord Barov was going to come down and make these minions all have 1 health, but then he would not have any way to activate it afterwards.
Right.
And then he'd just be taking 12 more plus a fireball in hand from Psycho.
Which, to me, that adds up to 18.
Does.
Do try to keep yourselves alive.
But I do think this was the long-term plan for Switz, that he wanted to really, really, really milk value up until this Barov clear, but you can see it's a very fine line to walk, right? Because even in that world where he was able to find the spell off the top to break through counterspell, still leaving a big minion in play.
Well,
he's still only at 18, and there's still a fireball in his opponent's hand.
Well, wow. I'm never going to get my Malygos play. The big deal here for me is, like, Psycho, the alarm bells must be going off because that was messy.
Yeah.
That was delayed, and he must know. Okay.
It's lethal!
Psycho is ending this game
That's
right
just
now.
lethal! It's Exactsies! Fireball, ping, exact mana, exact damage, exact lethal. Psycho puts 1 on the board for Mage, but I have to ask some questions about how greedy Swidz navigated his way through that game. He had multiple opportunities. Just get rid of minions. Those Conjurer's Calling minions that were on board just could have been a non-factor the entire time. The giant minion that spawned the Torn, the Batterhead that came out, that could have been a non-factor. Swidz could have just got rid the entire time, just kept swinging face with Wrench Calibers, chose not to. I think potentially dug his own grave towards the end of that game.
I think what was very important as well, like, you know, in isolation, you know, dealing with a big board that's threatening with your removal tools, well, that's just solid, right? That's just a good thing to do. But he could have done it on turn 8 after seeing the Conjurers come down or whatever, and the Giant, and then he had Rattlegore. And once that's just dropped down, even a Devolving Missile still leaves up a 6-drop, even if it's just on Ralgor. Without that, though, that is a threat that your opponent has to constantly deal with, or at least consider. So the fact he had a strong follow-up was what pushed me over the edge of being confused by not clearing. And the punish was there. But I think you could see there on Psycho's face a mixture of exhaustion, relief. As I said, these guys have been playing literally all day right now. And what it means is, even this early in Season 2 of Grandmasters, this is day 1, but Giala and Psycho now moving on to top 4 bank so many more points for themselves going into the next few weeks, and there are only 3 weeks total of Swiss to decide which division you get in. And Division A, although you can be relegated, is a lot of a safer experience and with more playoff spots to Worlds than Division B. So a big deal to make it to the final day on week 1.
Yeah, for sure. Yala and Psycho, 2 of the old guard at this point, getting themselves lined up for maximum points going through on Sunday, and now we are at an end for our day, and we will move on to Group B tomorrow to find out who joins those 2 players.
Yeah, and at an end, we are done for our first day. We hope you enjoyed it. Super hype to see all these matches get played out with the new expansion, and we've got plenty more coming up all weekend. So we'll be back after Asia Pacific starts and ends tomorrow. But for now, we're going to give you over to Frodan and TJ, who are going to be kicking off the Americas day 1. So thanks a lot for watching. We appreciate it, and we'll see you next time.